fans often get too carried away about rookies. But I'm feeling pretty good about KC Concepcion. I'm pretty high on that pick right now. And
offensive lineman. The first one to go, Spencer Fano, out of Utah, goes to the Browns at number 9. My biggest concern is he big enough to play left tackle?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I mean, it's hard not to like the player on tape. He's got light, quick feet. He's got outstanding movement and mobility.
Greg Cosell just dropped the kind of comments that should make Browns fans stop and think. Because this wasn't the usual rookie hype where everybody sounds like a future Pro Bowler in May. This was a real film guy looking at Spencer Fano and KC Concepcion and saying two very different but very important things. With Fano, the conversation got uncomfortable fast because Cosell basically said, "I like the player, I think he can be good for a long time, but I'm not fully sold that tackle is definitely his best position." And with Concepcion, he went the complete opposite direction, saying the Browns may have landed a dynamic weapon who fits Todd Monken's offense almost perfectly. That is why these comments matter so much. The Browns took 2 major swings in the first round. Fano was drafted to help fix an offensive line that fell apart last season, and Concepcion was drafted to give this offense the explosive receiver it has been missing. These are not luxury picks. These are foundation picks. If both hit, Cleveland's offense looks completely different. If one of them misses, the rebuild becomes a lot more complicated. And Cosell's breakdown made it clear that both players come with huge upside, but also very different levels of risk.
So long arms really help if you're a mauler, if you're a guy that doesn't have the best lateral movement. But if you're a guy like Fano who can move, who's athletic, who's agile, if he can work with his feet, think about this.
Let's start with Spencer Fano, because this is where the debate gets real. Cosell said after watching the tape, he came away thinking Fano's best position might actually be center. That is a wild thing to hear when you are talking about a prospect the Browns expect to play tackle. He was not calling Fano a bad player. He thinks he can be a 10-year pro. But the question is not whether he can play in the NFL. The question is whether he can be the long-term answer at left tackle. The concern comes down to arm length. Fano measured at 32 1/8 inches, short for an NFL tackle. There are not many starting tackles in the league with arms under 33 inches. That does not mean it's impossible. It does mean Fano is trying to become an exception. And when you spend a premium pick, you do not want to be hoping for exceptions. Here's the part nobody is talking about. If Fano becomes a good center or guard, that still helps Cleveland. But if you draft him thinking you solved left tackle and he eventually moves inside, the value of that pick changes completely. Left tackle is one of the most valuable positions in football, and for a franchise that has used 14 different players at left tackle since Joe Thomas, getting this right is not optional. It is urgent.
You know, there's a reason when you talk to coaches in the league, offensive coaches, line coaches, that only 6 offensive linemen in the league out of 64 starters have arm length less than 33 inches. There's a reason for that. Now, that doesn't mean Fano can't be the exception.
Arm length is not everything. If Fano has elite feet, balance, and anticipation, he can overcome the concerns. He does not need long arms. He can win with technique, patience, and cutting off angles before defenders ever get into his body. This is where it gets dangerous. Fano is going to be tested immediately by Myles Garrett every single day in practice. Brutal because Garrett can embarrass almost any tackle in football, but valuable because there's no better classroom for a rookie than facing one of the best pass rushers alive daily. If he survives those reps, Sundays start feeling a whole lot easier. Here's the part nobody is talking about. The Browns drafted Fano knowing versatility was part of the appeal. Left tackle, right tackle, even center drills during the pre-draft process. Tackle is the primary plan, but his floor is high because he can hold up in multiple spots. In today's NFL, that flexibility has real value. Fano gives Cleveland insurance at a position that has been a disaster for over a decade. Now he just has to prove he can be more than insurance.
He said, let's see if he plays.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take anything away from him because even if you ain't a tackle, I don't think you should be not for being versatile.
Browns fans do not want to hear versatile if it means not a tackle.
They want a left tackle. 14 different players at left tackle since Joe Thomas is not a fun fact. That is a decade-long problem. When the Browns spend major draft capital on Fano, fans want him to end that carousel for good. Now, flip to KC Concepcion and the tone changes completely. Cosell sounded genuinely excited. The suddenness, the twitch, the explosiveness, the ability to attack all three levels, that is exactly what Cleveland has been missing. Someone who stresses a defense in multiple ways before and after the catch. Here's the part nobody is talking about. The Zay Flowers comparison was the most important moment in that entire conversation. Monken mentioned that kind of role, and Cosell said it made him feel good because he had already written down the exact same comparison independently. That is significant. Flowers was not just a slot receiver. He was a motion weapon, a screen threat, and someone defenses had to locate before the snap. If Concepcion can be used like that in Cleveland, this offense becomes much harder to defend. And for a fan base that has watched this offense look slow and predictable for years, that changes everything.
I said the player I constantly thought of watching Concepcion was Zay Flowers coming out of Boston College, with my strong belief that Concepcion could be deployed in much the same way. And I said that obviously before I knew the Browns would draft them, so
Sure.
I had no idea. But, I really like Concepcion a lot.
This is where young players usually make a mistake. They think being explosive is enough. It is not. Concepcion has to become reliable. He has to know where to be, when to break, and how to adjust against coverage. The drop concern is real, but Cosell gave Browns fans an encouraging way to look at it. He believes Concepcion's drops come more from concentration lapses than bad hands, and concentration can be cleaned up. Bad hands cannot. If you watch Concepcion's game, it is hard not to get excited. He is not just a gadget guy. He can win outside, win inside, attack downfield, and take a short throw and turn it into a chunk play. That gives the Browns something they desperately needed last season: easy offense. The Browns quarterbacks last year had to work too hard for everything. Not enough players who could take a 4-yard pass and create 12. Not enough players who scared defenses horizontally. Concepcion changes that immediately. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Concepcion's college production probably undersells what he actually is. There were plays where he won early, separated cleanly, and simply did not get the ball on time or accurately because of quarterback play at Texas A&M. Cleveland may have gotten a heavily discounted player whose raw stats never fully matched his actual tape. Those are the kinds of picks that look brilliant a year later. Now, let's talk projection. Some people are saying 800 yards and 4 touchdowns as a rookie. Others are pushing closer to 900. That might sound aggressive, but if Concepcion becomes the manufactured touch player in Monken's offense, it is not impossible. The Browns do not need him to be a traditional number 1 right away. They need him to be dangerous. They need him to make defenses adjust and help the quarterback stay ahead of schedule. So, the question goes directly to Browns fans. Are you more worried that Spencer Fano might not be a true long-term tackle, or are you more excited that KC Concepcion could become Todd Monken's version of Zay Flowers? Because if both of them hit, this Browns offense could look completely different by mid-season, and this draft class could be remembered as the one that finally changed everything.